Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Coffin Talk, interviews with the living, a weekly podcast that explores how our views on death affect the way we live our life. And this week we have Bjorn Lestrud, and he's focusing on helping others align with their authentic expression through sound and spirit, drawing on years of exploration, including Qigong, which I'm sure I mispronounced, biofield tuning, and intuitive voice work. He helps guide people toward deeper connection and self-discovery. He believes the only true guru is you. And you can find more at bluedragonhealing.com. There will be notes with a direct link to that site, and I'm sure I'll ask him more about it in the podcast. But let's not waste any more time, and let's meet Bjorn. Hi, Bjorn. How's it going?
Oh, hey, how's it going? Oh, by the way, it's .net, not .com.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a big deal, and I will change it. So ignore what I said. Actually, listen to everything I said except the part where I said calm and add net. But there will be a direct link. But bluedragonhealing.net is his website, which does feature all of the mediums and modals. And I'm using the wrong word for what he does. So, but let's get into that. First, my question I ask every single guest, no matter what, is how old are you? Where did you grow up? And what generation, if any, do you consider yourself a member of?
I'm 42. I grew up in Hammond, Wisconsin, which is a small town kind of near the Minnesota border. And what was the third question?
What generation, if any, do you consider yourself a member of?
I am one of the older people in the millennium generation.
Cool.
Like right at the edge.
Yeah, I'm 43, so we're right on the same edge of that. And like most Americans, I've heard of Green Bay, Wisconsin, Madison, where my brother lived for 2 years. So I've actually been to Wisconsin 3 times, but I have not heard of where you grew up, and I've of course been to Minnesota. And kind of, are you like, is it freezing cold, Great Lakes, that kind of like vibe, or?
It gets very cold here during the winter. Often, we'll have days that are below zero. This last winter, there were some days that were 20 below. Granted, we do have fiber optic internet and all that.
Yeah, exactly. And I like to explore these kind of questions because I've always been fascinated by like culture and society, but then also what the actual topic of this podcast is, which is spirituality. Our metaphysical understanding of the world around us, our mental constructs of where we will go when we die, what happened to other people who already died, perhaps even where we were before we were born. And that does segue into, you're 42, I'm 43. Our generation maybe now has a lot of people who are doing cool things like you're doing, like biofield tuning, intuitive voice work and stuff. But growing up, that was like, you couldn't even say the words in your biography without people just stopping you and being like, I don't even and that would even include your average hippie, which is what these things are associated with. So I'm curious how you got into it, and then I'll ask you more questions after that.
Sure. It's interesting. If we're back in even maybe 2015,
Yeah.
you would introduce yourself. I would say, hey, I'm Bjorn. Now it's like, you'd say, hey, I'm so and so. I'm a third generation priestess from the whatever line of such and such, and a secret analogian shaman, whatever. Needless to say that the whole internet is packed full of people that use the term healer now, for sure. And for me, this sort of happened on accident, you could say. I went down to Tulum during COVID. As I've been, well, like I said, I lived in like 15 countries over like 5 years, and
Wow.
I took a break during COVID, but then I just got sick of feeling so cooped up all the time. So I went down there because it had a reputation of a place that people would go if they just wanted more freedom of movement. And it had a reputation of being kind of a spiritual community. And I felt attracted to that aspect of it. I had been dabbling with meditation for years and had always an interest in personal development, but and spirituality too. But on a my friend, he was already there and he invited me down, so I went down and he got into an accident and his toe was black and blue and his the whole toenail was like black, so it was looked like it was going to fall off for sure. And I saw him like 2 days later and he told me, look at my toe. And I look and his toe is totally normal, like nothing
Wow.
had ever happened. Eh, So my next question naturally was, how did this happen? And he told me he'd gone to this energy healing ceremony called the light portal and he left and it was healed. And that really interested me. And of course, he invited me. Apparently, they did this thing every week, so he invited me to come to the next one. And so, what else was I going to do? I had to see what that was all about. And so I went to this thing, and it was a blend of a bunch of different shamanic traditions and customs, and there were like 4 or 5 facilitators that were working in. They would have us do this group meditation, and then we were all standing up and doing movement exercises while at the same time doing these strong breathing exercises. And then they had us all laying down on our backs while continuing to do the strong breathing. And for anyone who hasn't done like a strong breathing, like a breath work before, it's I'd say of all the different things out there, the closest thing that people would compare to a drug-free way to experience what something like DMT might be similar to.
Okay.
It can be really psychedelic, and depending on especially what kind of blockages are there and what kind of experience you need to go through. Depends on the person, but a lot of people believe that DMT is something that releases naturally in the brain and that open mouth breathing is one way of activating it. And so we were doing a lot of strong breathing, and then the facilitator started moving around, sort of dynamically around the room, and there would be someone playing the drums and chanting, someone else maybe playing an instrument. There might be they were all kind of going around and doing like physical touch, energy, body work on the people that were there, and there were about 20 of us. And so I this little tiny little woman came up and started working on me, and she started digging into these places on my body, and it was extremely painful. But I experienced some sort of a release, and I started laughing uncontrollably. And so, like, it wasn't a miracle healing like my friend had experienced, but it was enough for me to say, hey, well, hey, that was enjoyable. I want to go deeper. So I hired a couple of the facilitators to do a private session.
Hmm.
They came to my apartment and they had me lay down, and one person worked on me for like an hour and a half, and then she's from this long lineage of Muslim healers, and she was the same one that worked on me during the ceremony. And after an hour and a half, she started explaining to me what she saw with her spiritual sight. And she started talking about ancestral energies and spirit guides. And these concepts were really almost entirely new to me. This was 2021, about 4 years ago.
Okay.
And so she was saying, on your father's side, which is the right side, the masculine side, I found this anger and this fear, and on your mother's side, I found this sadness and fear, and I your for your spirit guides, I saw this jaguar and this Native American shaman. She was actually nervous to tell me about the shaman,
Hmm.
which I found interesting. And so then the last part of the session was her partner would then serve Hape medicine to the participant, me. And I'd never taken Hape before. I didn't really even know what it was. But people call it by some different names. Some people call it just shamanic snuff.
Hmm.
Depends. And you take it in the nose usually.
Oh, I think I've tried
And
this actually. Yeah. Now, yeah.
you
Does it
have,
sting and burn?
oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I think we did it. I did ayahuasca a few different times. I think we did it
oh yeah,
before.
yep. They do it a
Yeah.
lot of times during ayahuasca ceremonies,
And
depending
I
on
used
the
to
tradition.
smoke cigarettes, so I was like afraid it was gonna like make me want nicotine again, and it did not.
Yeah, no, it's weird too, as it has way more nicotine than what a cigarette does.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, so yeah, he served me this Hape, and he had so there's two different ways you can take a self applicator,
Uh-huh.
or you can use a tepe, which is like a longer, usually curved object, and one person blows it into the other one's nose. So he did that to me. So he blew it in my nose, and then he immediately grabbed his maracas and started shaking them in my ears. And the effect that that had was that my default pattern in a situation where I didn't understand what was happening was to go to my mind and have my brain attempt to explain to me what was happening in the space. But because of the noise combined with the medicine, my brain was not giving me any kind of explanation. And then the guy got up behind me and he started making these chanting sounds. Next thing I know, I'm making chanting sounds and I can't stop. And and I started feeling this. It was like this force sort of rising up from within myself, and it was pushing up something really dense, really sticky, and horrible.
Yeah.
With it, and then once the chanting finished, I threw up and I was sick on the floor for like 4 hours.
Wow.
Then the next morning, I woke up and I realized that all this stiff chronic pain that I'd had for the last 2 years in my knees was just gone, because it had gotten to the point where anytime I would be sitting down, I'd have to straighten my legs out within like 2 or 3 minutes just to relieve the stiffness that had been setting in, and that just disappeared after that.
Wow.
And so I got some feedback from the two that gave me the treatment, and they were telling me how awesome it was when I started chanting, and there's I started getting interest in invitations to go to different places and chant. I was doing it in ayahuasca ceremonies. I was doing it in some light portal ceremonies. Uh, and then I had this Bufo experience, which is, you know, if you want to talk about communicating with the dead, I mean,
Yeah, let's do it.
people often say that Bufo for many is literally like having the experience of what it's like to die.
Wow. Wow. And you did this.
I did. I did it a
Okay.
couple of times.
All right.
The interesting thing for me was that
Real quick, I'll cut you off because it'll probably make more sense to do it this way. If this does influence what you think happens when we die, since that's a regular question I ask every guest, you can go ahead and give it now with this if you want to.
I hope it does,
Okay,
because
cool.
my experience was absolutely wonderful.
Awesome. All right, cool. So tell us your experience, please. This is incredible. Thank you for
And so,
letting me interrupt you.
some people really hate the experience they have with that medicine. So it varies a lot, but for me, all right. So I think there are a couple of ways to take Bufo. One is smoking it, which is what I did, and it was in a private session. And I hadn't even determined whether or not I was really going to do it, because I had been told, hey, if you're going to do Bufo, since you're already planning to do ayahuasca in a week, you should do the Bufo before, a couple of days before, but don't do it right after.
Hmm.
Just the way the medicine interacts, because apparently the Bufo opens the eighth and ninth chakras, whatever. And so I said to myself, all right, self, well, the energy doesn't seem to be moving here in favor of me doing bufo. So I just made a declaration. I said, well, if I get a signal in the next, 24 hours, an unmistakable signal that I should do the bufo before the ayahuasca, then I'll do it.
Love it.
The next morning, I get a phone call from this woman that I knew, kind of knew, and she said, "Hey, I was supposed to do bufo tonight, and my partner backed out at the last minute. Would you like to come and do it?"
That's hilarious. I love it.
And it's the exact truth of what happened too. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we're in the environment, and so they said, okay, so they got a mattress on the floor, and they had the two of us taking turns. So I would go, then she would go, then I would go, then she would go, and each round is like 20 minutes. And so I went, and they said, okay, so you're sitting up, you inhale, now go slow, keep going, keep going, keep going, and then they had me keep going until all the smoke had cleared. And they said, okay, now you just throw your arms up, straight up in the air, and then just fall back onto the mattress. So I finished, I inhaled all the smoke, and I threw my arms up, and before I even hit the mattress, I just remember myself going, oh. Like it was like I felt like an old tree just returning back to the earth. Just
Wow.
so good. And I'm laying there. Within a short amount of time, I start feeling this really, really intense sensation in the middle of my forehead. Like almost like someone just digging their fingernail as hard as they could into my head. And then the next thing I know, I just saw this just incredible explosion of blue light everywhere, and I burst into a song that just was just
Wow.
coming through me from the other side. And it was like the most beautiful song I had ever heard, felt, or sang. And it was, if I were to describe the energy of it, almost like a celebration of love, I guess. And it unearthed and unlocked these parts of my voice that I didn't even know existed, like different levels of frequency, like much higher highs, lower lows, and it stayed with me ever since.
Well, so sorry.
Go for it.
That's a good segue into I met you on a mutual site for people who podcast, and I was on your show.
Mhm.
And in the middle of the interview, towards the end, I noticed, and I asked you about it after, that you have like a calmness, a centeredness, a an unmistakable uh energy that seems less stirred up and like moving around, like almost like how molecules like move less as it gets colder,
Mhm.
and not implying cold and negative, in case someone's using that metaphorical spectrum. But and so in my opinion, hearing you tell these stories to me just gives more credence to exactly what it is that I picked up then and pick up now. You have some people are calm and some people are deliberate and some people speak with like a more deliberate approach, and you do all of those things, but those people don't give me that same sense of energy that you're giving me, which is a sense of peace, which is different from happiness, which is different from like contentment. Like there's a lot of other words people use, but to me, the word I'm using specifically is peace, and peace is like really just no movement. Like an ocean is peaceful; it's not moving. So I'm curious, like, have you always been this way, and now you're even more this way, or have you really changed a lot since these experiences in 2021, 2022?
Yeah. So the word you might be looking for,
Mm-hmm.
calm, there's also kind of an effervescence to it, but it's not outward. It's all from inward.
Okay.
And I mean, like, if we're talking in terms of spirit guides, my primary guide, as I experience the spirit world, is a blue water dragon, and they're a
Okay.
dragon of flow, creative flow. And I would say that the energy has always been with me, but I carried a lot of heavy, heavy, heavy pain and had to go through some intense processes to move through the energy.
Mhm.
There was a period in Tulum, actually, after I had even had the experiences that I just told you about, I still hadn't gone through a real integration of all of it. And I had been invited even to become one of the core facilitators for the Light Portal, the place where I started out as a participant in the beginning of the whole cycle there. But there became a point where I, I, I had was struggling to understand boundaries, like when I'd work on someone and I'd take something on, what was mine, what was theirs, and to really know myself in that way. And there was a point where I went through this so intense process, about 2 months, where I basically almost locked myself in my apartment, and I was just like crying and just going through these intense bouts of sadness that were just coming through me like waves over and over and over again. Oh my gosh. and uh and then after that finally cleared, I met my next teacher, who was from the had been trained for years with the Shipibo tradition, and with them, I did a plant spirit diet with this plant called Marosa, which is by the Shipibo considered to be one of the master plants. It's all about the heart. I did this diet all energetically, meaning I didn't actually physically drink a tea or consume anything. The whole thing was energetic. I would meet up with the maestro once every 2-3 weeks. He would give me a new chant over Zoom, and then it was my responsibility to listen to this chant every day. And then I would do this grounding ritual with the mapacho afterwards and blow it in these different directions. About a month into that experience, I went out for a walk one evening and I started to feel this really warm, sort of very soothing, comfortable sensation right in like the upper middle part of my chest. Felt really nice, but it wasn't like the heart, the like where that we know of, the heart. It was between the heart and the throat chakras, we'll say, called the
Okay.
high heart.
Okay.
Next thing I know, as I'm walking, it's about 10 o'clock at night, maybe earlier. I felt the sensation like an opening, like the petals of a flower all opening at the same time, like right in that area. And as I kept walking, it was almost like I stepped into another world where I was immediately just in love with everything that I saw. I was completely intoxicated with love. I felt this just unrelenting force of like unconditional love pouring right through that spot that had opened in me. And wherever I would fix my eyes and my attention, I'd fall in love with whatever I rested my eyes on: the road, the tree, a dog, didn't matter, the fence. And, and everywhere I looked, I would see just in the air itself these incredibly majestic combinations and blends of different colors coming together that were dynamically shifting and adjusting, so that however I would adjust my own attention, the colors would shift too, but they would never become any less beautiful. It was like an energetic rebirth.
I have no way of asking this without like the American expression is going to get in the way of the actual literal words I'm trying to ask. You seem like you don't care about anything. Now that sounds from an American to an American like an insult, and you understand why we're both laughing. But I also think you can parse what I'm really trying to say. So has these experiences freed you of like the burden of worry that most of us self-obsessively think we have control to take care of and worry about?
Hey everyone, if you're a fan of the show, please head over to mikeyop.com and click the subscribe button. It's the best way to support us, and it's free. That's MIKEYOPP.com. Thanks!
I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm completely free of all that, but
Mhm.
I would say that maybe 90% of the time I am completely indifferent to all of it.
Mhm.
It was that experience followed by all the integration that I've done since then, the daily practices of, doing the qigong movement and listening to tunings and doing breath work and continuing to do these things every single day, pay attention to my thoughts, to journal, to reflect, and all that. And as I've continued to do that, everything, my whole experience just continues to deepen. It's a big part of it for me is that I feel much less emotionally triggered when
Mhm.
certain things happen. And an easy example I could give is used to be whenever I would get hurt physically, like if I stubbed my toe or I slammed my head on something or something like that, that my immediate reaction would be to feel angry about it.
Because like emotions aren't attached to pain, but we like commonly do. Like a good example is I used to laugh at myself because I'll like swear when when I get hurt, and I'm just like that's so silly. Like I'm just picking a set of phonemes, I'm combining them together. I've been taught that these phonemes are naughty, like don't say them, and so for some reason my brain has a shortcut to express something like anger, obviously, does that, and so that's part of for me like emotional resilience and resilience in general is like understanding that I don't have to be attached to the experience and I can still witness and be a part of the experience. I guess so first of all, I do want to like replug the services you provide. And if people go to bluedragonhealing.net, they will be able to reach you and you are offering help for these kind of things, right? Like you're out there to help people.
Yeah, the biggest part of what I do is to help people sort of calibrate something similar to what I went through, which is reconnecting with the authentic expressive self that's within
Hmm.
and helping to move the energy so that that can come through.
That's awesome. And as a father with young children, one of the most depressing things about meeting people like you is that there's no like resource or educational system for my children to encounter any of this earlier than I was able to and then you were able to. There's no
Mhm.
like in America, it's not even I'm not even complaining like there's not a private school. Like I'm saying like literally our society doesn't even have room for the life path that everything we are talking about really would be conducive to, which is like obviously we have to grow food and we have to like take care of each other and we need blankets and fire and heat and like there's nothing wrong with high fiber internet connections. Like I'm not anti-technology unlike a lot of people in our communities that we run through, but what I am concerned about is that there's not even like a nod towards or like a peaceful approach to like young people in this country. I'm only being specific to America. So I'm curious, like,
Yeah.
do you share any of that? Do you have any like ideas? Like, I know you're not a psychic, and I'm not asking you to make predictions, but do you think our culture is shifting since you and I are 42, 43, and we've shifted?
Most definitely, there's a lot of shifting going on, which is why we see such extreme contrasts in the world right now because the healing that has to take place can't really come to the surface without such heavy things coming out and being so apparent and obvious to everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Where
well said. That's just well said. That's all I got to say.
like you can go and you can study all the different traditions of the world, whether it's Taoism, Buddhism, whether it's particular type of energy healing, this or that, but at the end of the day there's too much dogma attached to those things to really, for most people, to really make them their life's work. We have to learn how to not only come to an understanding of energy, but how to move forward in a way that really resonates with our own human design.
Hmm. Hmm. That's brilliant. I like that, because that is something you've said at least 3 times in this interview, and it's something that I don't think I instantly took to when I started. My parents are transcendental meditators. I was raised from a young age to like
Mhm.
be open-minded to this kind of stuff. So I had like a huge head start on people, but that doesn't mean I fared any better. I was a kid growing up in a community with other kids, and I wanted Nikes and Reeboxes, and I wanted to go to school and, do something and make a living. And so, but I also, like, now that I'm on the other side of this, meaning I'm on the side of like looking for my path. I don't care what other people think about my path, and I don't need their feedback. Like, I'm just looking for waking up every day, loving life. Like you said, like, I don't, and again, I think a lot of people inappropriately, but they still do take offense to the fact that like outside chemicals may or may not have facilitated you or me or other people on this journey. And I don't call them outside, and I don't even care if they're chemicals, but I do know that that's like on the minds of some people. And to me, it's hilarious because like anyone who goes to a doctor and they say like you need to take this antibiotic, they're just going to take it. So like if there's plant matters and materials and chemicals and cocktails and smoke and other things that can help people achieve a sense of love, it's not, I think from this interview, what I really hope people listen to was you didn't say, I took a drag of this thing and then for the next 4 hours I saw a fence and was in love with it. What you said was, I felt a difference in a place in me, and it created a different way of looking at the world. And it wasn't just for 4 hours, and it's sustainable. But you also didn't say, and that was it. I went home and I never did anything ever again. You said, no, like I still do breath work. I do Qigong. Like I don't, and that's something. I heard this quote the other day. I don't remember who said it, but the person wasn't famous enough for me to register their name. But it was a great quote. It said, "Most people are looking for uphill results with downhill effort,"
Hmm.
and I think that's interesting because what you do to achieve what you are sounds like a commitment to me, and there's nothing wrong with that. I have a commitment to my wife. I have a commitment to my children. Like making a commitment to a way of life is a part of being a human, and it's a part of our path. So I'm just kind of summarizing for people who listen. I know my audience pretty well because I really, really admire you, Bjorn, for talking about your experience, but you never say like for other people what they should do. And that's why I asked if you're there to help people, because I do think you are someone who can instantly read someone's kind of like what's going on and then just kind of see maybe like something that would help them. So I'm endorsing you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So this commitment that you talk about, uh, it's kind of it's at one point I felt like I crossed some sort of chasm, some sort of initiation where it's impossible to look back. I got red pilled, you could say, and
Yeah.
to my own consciousness, and so the supportive activities that I implemented in my life, it was like they became something that was not to me in my mind optional. It was something
Uh,
I needed, that I craved. But then also I looked and found things that really worked for me, and not everything that I tried I stuck with.
uh-huh.
I tried out different modalities and tools until I found things that I really actually enjoyed using and doing. And I feel like that aspect of enjoyment is something that's been missing for a lot of people in the healing process. And I observe a lot of times a person can, and I know I recognize it because it happened to me, get into a state. I got into a state where my feelings were sort of my life, and if I would become angry or sad, then I would get all agitated. Oh, now I have to process this anger, and I have to go through this. Now I have to process this sadness, and I have to go through that. And that's a very low level way to live.
Yeah.
Granted, sure, I was, more sensitive to the energy at that point and able to tune into stuff, but it's a very low level way to live still. And so it's been also a process of discovering and understanding like the building blocks of living, and how those are just like, you know, almost at the survival level types of things, But then as I start stacking blocks and then looking for what how do I want to actually contribute what I have to help other people, and then how can that grow, and what is that vision, what does that look like? When the greater I can see the impact of that, the more I'm able to make sense and meaning out of these smaller things that happen, and they bother me much less when I see them as parts of a whole rather than my entire existence.
Wow, that was incredible, Bjorn. This has been an incredible interview. I'm really thankful for you and your time, and I'm thankful. I've never said this to a single guest before. I'm thankful for your energy. I was looking forward to it, and it's just cool. And you have a great smile and a great laugh, but there's like a peace, and I don't know. There's my life has been long. I've met some crooks. I've met some weirdos. I've met some whatevers. But, I also meet the real deal very often. And you are definitely one of them. So is there anything you'd like to leave my audience with before we go?
Well, I'm definitely weird. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But,
No.
but we're in kind of a little world where it's almost weird not to be weird now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, being normal used to be, I'm gonna hold everything inside, pretend like everything's normal. Now you see someone doing that and they're like, what the heck is that person's problem? Why don't they just, go do something, express that or whatever?
Yeah.
One thing I would try to communicate is that remind everyone that we're conductive beings, that when we're in the presence of each other or other living objects, we take on that energy. Like if you put your barefoot on the ground, your entire body chemistry changes when the energy of the earth is moving through you. When we're around another person, we're influenced by their energy and they're influenced by us. So how you show up matters, and who you surround yourself with matters too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, dude. There were 5-6 different quotes I wrote down. I don't know if you notice, like sometimes I'm typing a note because I have to get quotes from these, and that was one of my favorite ones. But though, think about what you said about everything being so obvious is still one of my favorite things I've heard in like months. It's just weird. I think the most famous story for it is the emperor's wearing no clothes, but there's just like the weirdest thing going on right now in reality, or what we call reality. And thank you for sharing that.
I get a lot of laughs out of it too, like watching it from, keeping a detached perspective on it. I remember this story, and I don't remember all the context of it, but it's like there's a farmer and this, apparently terrible thing happens, and everyone comes to him and they're saying, we're so sorry that happened. That's a horrible thing. And he goes, maybe. And then he gets blessed with all this like luck, and people are saying, wow, that's so, so amazing. And he goes, maybe. And then the luck turns into all this other horrible stuff happening. And you just, it's just maybe because, we don't really know what it's all in service for. We don't really know what's going to even happen tomorrow. And so just enjoy the ride and all the craziness that comes with it. And remember that everything is also a reflection of us. And when we resist something that's happening, we're also resisting a part of ourselves, because as a human being, we are capable of everything that we see other people doing, whether it's the most generous thing or the darkest, most evil thing. We have it all in ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. Amen. Well, thank you, Bjorn. To everyone listening and also people watching, as always, there will be ample space in the notes to find him. But I really do endorse Bjorn, and I endorse his approach to thinking about your path, not what someone else's path was, and not copycatting anyone else, because that's honestly not going to work. And as always, the best way to support our show, Coffin Talk, is just to head over to MikeyOpp.com. That's MikeyOpp.com, and you can sign up for the weekly email, which is either fiction, nonfiction, songs, dance numbers. No, I'm joking. I don't dance, but it's a bunch of artistic stuff that I love to do. So thank you to everyone for listening, and thank you again, Bjorn, for coming on the show. And my name is Mike Oppenheim. You have been listening to Coffin Talk, and we will see you soon.